Paul Massey, a name whispered in hushed tones, a figure shrouded in equal parts fear and notoriety. He was Mr. Big, the seemingly untouchable kingpin of Manchester's criminal underworld. From the tough streets of Salford, Massey ascended to become a major player in organized crime. His empire drugs, protection rackets, and whatever else brought profit and solidified his iron grip on the city. To some, he was a ruthless gangster who ruled through fear and violence. To others, he was a community leader, a Robin Hood figure who commanded respect and loyalty. This duality, this enigmatic mix of menace and magnetism, made him a legend in his own time. But legends, as they often do, have a way of meeting an abrupt and brutal end. Massey, for all his power, was not invincible. He had enemies, rivals who craved his throne, and the law constantly nipping at his heels. He had survived attempts on his life before, each one a stark reminder of the perilous world he inhabited. But in the summer of 2015, fate, in the form of a lone gunman, would come calling once more. This time, however, there would be no escape. July 26, 2015. A day etched in the annals of Manchester's criminal history. It began like any other summer day, but by nightfall the streets of Salford would be stained with the blood of Mr. Big. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the city, Paul Massey returned home, unaware that he was walking into a carefully laid trap. Outside his home, a figure lay in wait, shrouded in the gathering darkness. This was no random act of violence, no opportunistic robbery gone wrong. This was an assassination, meticulously planned and executed with chilling precision. As Massey stepped out of his car, the silence of the evening was shattered by a deafening hail of gunfire. The weapon of choice, an Uzi submachine gun, a weapon designed for one purpose only, to kill swiftly and efficiently. The gunman, later identified as a contract killer known as the Iceman, disappeared into the night, leaving behind a scene of chaos and carnage. In the aftermath of the assassination, as police swarmed the scene and the city reeled in shock, questions arose. How could this have happened? Could this brazen attack on one of the city's most notorious figures have been prevented? Whispers of a police warning, allegedly given to Massey just days before his death, began to circulate. According to sources, Massey had been informed by Greater Manchester Police that his life was in danger. He was a marked man, a target in a simmering gang war that threatened to engulf the city. But had he taken the warning seriously? Or had he, like so many times before, dismissed it as just another occupational hazard? The police, for their part, maintained that they had followed protocol, that Massey had been duly informed of the threat to his life. But Massey's family disputed this claim, insisting that he had received no such warning. The controversy surrounding the police warning would become a focal point of the investigation and a lingering source of anger and resentment for Massey's family and supporters. The hunt for Massey's killer was swift and relentless. Greater Manchester Police, facing intense pressure to bring the perpetrators to justice, launched a full-scale investigation. The city held its breath, bracing itself for the potential fallout from this brazen attack on one of its own. The man who pulled the trigger, the shadowy figure known as the Iceman, was no stranger to the criminal underworld. His real name, Mark Fellows, a career criminal with a reputation for ruthlessness and efficiency. He was a ghost, a phantom who moved silently in the shadows, leaving a trail of bodies in his wake. The motive behind the hit was no mystery. Massey's assassination was the latest salvo in a bloody gang war that had been raging beneath the surface of Manchester's underworld. Fellows, it transpired, was a key player in a rival gang locked in a bitter feud with Massey's crew. The assassination was an act of revenge, a calculated move to eliminate a powerful enemy and consolidate control over the city's criminal enterprises. In January 2019, nearly 4 years after Massey's assassination, justice of a sort was served. Mark Fellows, the Iceman, was found guilty of the murders of both Paul Massey and John Kinsella, a close friend of Massey who was gunned down in a similarly brazen attack in 2018. Fellows was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 38 years. The conviction brought some measure of closure to Massey's family and friends, but it did little to heal the wounds left by his death. The streets of Salford, once under the iron grip of Mr. Big, were now a battleground. with rival gangs vying for control in the power vacuum left by his demise. The cycle of violence, it seemed, was far from over. The conviction of fellows may have removed one dangerous individual from the streets, but it did not address the root causes of gang violence that continued to plague Manchester. Section 6. The A-Team, Rise and Fall. To understand the impact of Massey's death, one must delve into the history of the A-Team, the criminal gang he once commanded. Formed in the 1990s, the A-Team dominated Manchester's underworld for years, controlling drug trafficking, extortion rackets, and other illicit activities. Their reign was marked by violence and intimidation, but also by a strange sort of community acceptance. Massey, with his charisma and ruthlessness, was the glue that held the gang together. He commanded loyalty from his men and instilled fear in his rivals. However, his death created a void, a power vacuum that rival gangs were quick to exploit. The A-Team, once seemingly invincible, began to crumble. Internal strife, revenge killings, and a concerted crackdown by law enforcement all contributed to the gang's downfall. The once feared A-Team, now fractured and leaderless, became a shadow of its former self. Section 7. Manchester's Uneasy Silence. In the years since Massey's assassination, an uneasy silence has settled over Manchester. The gangland wars have subsided, but the threat of violence still simmers beneath the surface. The city, once proud of its working-class roots, now bears the scars of gang violence. The silence is not one of peace, but of fear and resignation. The community, caught in the crossfire, remains trapped in a cycle of poverty and violence. The legacy of Mr. Big is a complex one. Was he a ruthless gangster who deserved his fate? Or was he, as some believe, a product of his environment, a man who rose to power in a system that offered few other options? The debate continues with no easy answers. What is certain is that his death exposed the dark underbelly of Manchester, a world where loyalty is fleeting, violence is a currency, and power comes at a deadly price. Section 8. The Legacy of Mr. Big. Paul Massey's legacy is a tangled web of contradictions. To some, he was a ruthless criminal, a symbol of everything wrong with Manchester's underworld. To others, he was a folk hero, a man who commanded respect and loyalty, who looked out for his own, and who, in their eyes, made the streets safer. His death, however, left an undeniable void. The fragile peace he maintained, the code of conduct he enforced, crumbled in the wake of his assassination. The streets of Salford became a battleground, as rival gangs, emboldened by his absence, jostled for control. The violence escalated, claiming more innocent lives and further tarnishing the city's reputation. The legacy of Mr. Big became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the seductive allure of power, the corrosive nature of violence, and the devastating impact it has on communities. Section 9. A city scarred, a code broken. Manchester today bears the scars of its gangland past. The assassination of Paul Massey, the subsequent power struggles, and the rising tide of violence left an indelible mark on the city's psyche. The code by which men like Massey operated, a code that, however flawed, maintained a semblance of order, was shattered. The city, however, is resilient. Community leaders, law enforcement, and social programs are working tirelessly to break the cycle of violence and offer young people a different path. The fight is far from over, but there is hope. Hope for a future where the name Paul Massey is not a source of fear or reverence, but a reminder of a dark chapter in the city's history, a chapter that, with courage and determination, can be closed for good. Manchester, like all great cities, has the capacity to heal, to rebuild, to emerge from the ashes of tragedy stronger than before. The assassination of Mr. Big was a tragedy, but it also served as a wake-up call, a stark reminder that the battle against gang violence is one that demands constant vigilance, unwavering commitment, and a belief in the power of redemption.